Alright guys, I had to break this down into two parts, so here we go. Alright, I don't know if I covered this on the other video, but if I didn't, I'm going to say it again. That is, you're going to need a star bit labeled as a security bit. It is called a security bit because it has a hole in the center of the bit. The tip of it is shaped like a star, that's why it's called a star bit. It's labeled as a security bit because it has the hole cut out in the center of it, because the screws that are inside the Xbox 360 controller are security bits, so you'll need this one. This size is an H6 security bit. When you get your security bit, if you don't have any, you got to buy some. Make sure that the end of it from here to here is at least 1 inch. You'll need that depth so that you can reach down into it and not scar your paint job that you just applied on your remote. Okay, if you don't and you can't find one with at least 1 inch, you can do the same thing that I did here. I held this with a pair of channel locks, vice grips, and used a grinder, my bench grinder in my shop, and grinded it down to get my 1 inch. Okay. Alright, with that said, let's move on to how you take your controller apart. If you're not experienced with taking your controller, this is going to help you out. You have 7 screws through here, 1 in the center. Take 3 out on each side, here and here. 1 in the center is located up underneath a barcode sticker. Peel the barcode sticker off, take the screw out. These screws are still in here, but when you're pulling your remote apart, just use a little bit of gentle force to pop it off. You have your circuit board. You have your circuit board on the inside of it. It is not screwed down. It's held together with your screws. Just lightly pull it up. Make sure you're not putting any pressure on your motors on the inside of it. They come off real easy. Pull it off. Make sure you hold it down like so, because once that circuit board comes off, you have your buttons underneath it. That way, because if you held it like this and you took it apart, your buttons would fall out into the floor and just be all messy and stuff. Make sure you hold it down, pull the circuit board off, set it down to the side, and peel all your parts off of it. It's pretty self-explanatory how the parts come off, man. I mean, it's real easy once you get the screws out of it. But alright, that's how you do that. Okay, now that we've got our 360 remotes broke down, we'll go into our 3 different phases of painting it. With the design that you've chosen, you can figure out which way they need to apply to the 3 different methods that I think there's only 3. There could be more, but that's just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Alright, the first method is going to be using your masking tape. This is going to be important with any of the methods. You're going to take your masking tape, and let's just say that this is all broke down, and you've taken your alcohol and rubber gloves, make sure you got your rubber gloves on, and you've cleaned the surface of the remote, and you take your masking tape and apply the masking tape in a manner that allows for the least amount of creases in the tape, like so. Alright, now, I mean, you can apply it in different ways, but this is what I was going to get at, though, is you see how it's got the wrinkles here? You kind of want to try to avoid having as many of those as possible. It's going to happen that you're going to get them in there, but make sure that you just try your best not to have as many as you would normally get if you was just throwing it on there. You want as least as possible. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to say about taping it off and doing your first design is that when you overlay your tape, make sure that you use just the amount that you need. See, like right there I was talking about with the wrinkles, you can't avoid it sometimes. It happens. But also, if you can see that, I only use just a little bit to overlap. You don't need it to overlap a lot, so just use just a little bit. That way you're not burning up your tape. There is a reason for just using just a little bit of overlap. The reason for using just a little bit of overlap is because with doing the tape on design, this will be your first design. I didn't cover that, and I'm just kind of winging it through here, guys. But let's say that you just wanted to go with a simple little circle design on your tape. You draw out your circle design, you take your X-Acto knife, and you cut the circle out, and you spray it on there, and that's how that will be done. The reason why I say don't overlap on the tape is so that you don't have to apply a lot of pressure with your X-Acto knife to cut the tape off, you can just lightly move the X-Acto knife around the tape so that it's just slightly cutting into the tape, and only the tape is being cut, basically. So you're not cutting down into your remote control and scarring it and stuff. That's the whole reason for that. But that will be your first class on there, is just a simple tape off of design, draw it on there, cut it out, paint it, peel the tape off, and seal it. Alright, that will be your first thing. The second one that you can do is actually using stencils. Stencils is very easy to do. This is just a cardstock printout of the Punisher design. The first remote control I did was done with this. I used cardstock. I cut out my shape. You can either use tape to apply your stencil and then cut your stencil out of the tape and leaving the tape in here to the controller, or you can buy a product called Craft Bond by Elmer's and spray it onto the back of the stencil and just apply it like so. That's how I applied mine onto the side of the controller. When you apply it onto the controller, make sure that you get the stencil down as tight as you can on there so that you're not allowing any airflow underneath the stencil in the controller. If you allow for airflow, your spray paint is going to get in those crevices and you're not going to get the nice smooth stencil effect that you're looking for. That will be your second step. That will be your second class, excuse me. Once you have applied this, let it sit for, a good 20 minutes or so. Let it, kind of bond a little bit. Spray it with your spray paint. Come back, let it cure. This is very important. If I didn't say this in the other video, I can't remember or not. Make sure you allow the paint to cure properly. The paint needs to cure properly so that when you're applying your layers of tape, that you're not peeling the paint back off and destroying what you've worked so hard to achieve. So make sure you allow the paints to cure. So with that said, once you let the paint cure for at least an hour for each level, at least let it sit for an hour, you would peel this off, then seal it. Using the Craft Bond, though, I will say this, using the Craft Bond, I ran into one little thing. It leaves a slight residue of glue behind. To get the glue off, I used my alcohol and just a Q-tip and cleaned the glue off of where the stencil was, and then I applied my polyacrylic. But make sure that when you apply the polyacrylic that you allow it to sit an hour in between each layer that you do on the seal of it to let it bond properly, let it cure properly, an hour in between each one of them. I would go as far as to apply at least 2 layers of the polyacrylic sealant. I'm saying a lot. I just realized that. But make sure that you apply the polyacrylic at least twice to get it sealed properly. And once you've put your second layer on, allow it to dry for at least 24 hours. Once you let it dry for 24 hours, you can put your remote back together and go play ODST. If you go as far as I did with the R2 remote, this would be your third class, I would say, and that is layers. Each paint color that you see is actually the remote being taped off with that area exposed for the paint left open and everything else left taped off. Keep in mind the controller is broke down in this stage, so I mean you do get to do fast spots like your buttons. You can paint those separate, this little piece is separate, the whole back of it separate, but make sure, man, fuck, how did I get into